Okay, I would like to call to order the Village of Lansing Planning Board meeting for Tuesday, January 28th, to order at 7:02 PM. It is always 7:02 PM. I always say that.
7.
A couple things before we start. We do have a quorum here. Me, Lorraine and Pat are here, and Elisa and Jim are both online, but they are voting members for tonight. So, and then Yamila is also here. So, first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes for November 11th, 2024. I know folks got a chance to look at them and send some comments back. Any other comments to add? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the November 11th, 2024 minutes.
I move we approve.
Motion by Pat.
Second.
Second by Lorraine, all in favor.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is the public comment period. This is an opportunity for anyone from the public to make a comment about anything that's not already on the agenda for this evening.
Susan Ainsley here for the trustee liaison.
Hi, Susan.
Everyone.
Okay. Hearing no other comments, I'll entertain a motion to close the public comment period.
I move to close the public comment period.
Motion by Lisa,
Second.
second by Jim, he beat you to it, sorry. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next item on the agenda is planning board review for Ross signage. Ross Dress for Less as signage for the proposed new store located at Cayuga Mall, 2309 North Trip Hammer Road, excuse me, which has a planned sign area. As per the PS planned sign area section 5B, planning board approval should be required for sign or signs that exceed 55 square feet prior to the issuance of a sign permit by the village zoning officer. Mike, do you want to provide some other information here?
Yeah, you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, there's quite a little bit here I gotta explain and kind of unpack here. We have Tina with us. Hi Tina, it's the first time I actually met you and didn't email you. What's happened is Ross Dress for Less is going to occupy the Joanne Fabric part of the Cayuga Mall. Does not require a special permit. We're talking about apples to apples, no change in parking or anything like that. But what does happen is anytime there's signage for the Cayuga Mall, we have to refer to the planned sign area, which you should have in front of you. And you should also have what Tina has provided for a proposed signage for that new retail store. If you look at the planned sign area, the rules and regs for that, you'll see where it says building signs, number 2, Roman numeral 2, where E comes in, the stores that occupy 14,000 square feet, a gross floor area, they have a primary storefront of up to 2 accessory signs not to exceed 150 square feet. So what Tina has provided with me, and I will go over that in a few minutes, each sign and how much square foot is being proposed. But if you look down to enforcement, you'll see that Roman numeral 5B, planning board approval shall be required for signs that exceed 55 square feet prior to the issuance of the sign permit. And that's why we're here tonight. What you're going to do is I'll review the signs. I'll give you the square footage. You'll see the sign layout. You will figure what you're going to allow. Are you going to only allow what is on this planned sign area? If that's the case, then Tina's going to have to go back and figure out how to get to that 150 square feet. If you're going to allow over that, because let's say the signage looks reasonable, if you're going to look over that, then we're going to have to go and get a sign variance. So this is kind of what the planning board needs to determine. So if you pull out your packet, do you want me to bring this up, or does everyone have a packet?
We've got them.
Okay.
Oh, but Jim and Lisa might not.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I have my packet. It's just, I want to be sure when you're referring to something that I absolutely, I'll ask.
Why
if
don't you
I-
bring it up? Also,
Yeah,
not
Mike
sure.
can bring it up, that's fine.
Yeah.
A second here. Mike, have you got that screen shared for me?
Yep, just did it.
Okay. All right, everybody see that okay?
No,
Not yet.
Not yet.
There we go.
There we go. I think
Okay.
we're working on it.
All right, so let's
Okay.
go to,
Full screen. Let's go to full screen.
you guys can't see that, okay?
If you can zoom in a little bit, it'd probably be
I'll
better.
zoom in on one of those, the ones I'm gonna look
Okay.
at first.
Okay.
On page S1, this is the storefront sign. And Tina, please jump in if I'm saying this wrong or doing this wrong or explaining it wrong. What I have figured for this sign is I took your width, and it's basically figuring out the square that you can put around whatever wording is there. And what I've come up with on that is 164.5 square feet for this section alone.
Just for Ross Dress for Less over the front door.
Yes, and that's already over
Okay.
150. These
Okay.
two signs over here are both 8 foot each,
The little guys.
the two little guys. Okay, so we got those two calculations. Then we go to the side of the building. This would be facing Trip Hammer Road. The total square footage here is 126 square feet. All right, and we go to the next page, and the pylon sign doesn't count because back in the language of the planning or the sign plan area, they are allowed the use of the actual pylon sign to have a spot on that. So we don't even calculate what belongs in there. That's not added square footage. Okay, we go to,
can I ask a question?
yep.
How does excluding the pylon sign, of course, how does the square footage in this signage proposal compare with the existing square footage on the Joanne Fabric store?
That I don't know, Jim. I don't know. They only have
It's actually
one sign
gone
out
back,
front.
so-
I know. I went up.
Is anything on the side of the building?
There wasn't,
No, there's not.
yeah, there wasn't
There was
anything.
nothing on the side.
I went
They
over to
only
look
had
too.
them over.
and I'm like, it's gone. already.
Tina, do you happen to know what that is now? Tina, you there?
Sorry about that. I don't know offhand, but I'm trying to find out right now.
Okay, I'll continue with what I'm doing. Jim, put that on hold if you would, please.
Well, no, could I just clarify or follow up on the last question? We all know there's no sign on the current sign on the side of the Joanne building. Would also be curious, and I guess, something to look at, comparing the square footage of the sign in the front of the building above the entrance to the current Joanne sign. So
Yeah,
that might be a second inquiry.
Joanne Fabrics typically have, their signs are pretty big on the front facade.
Yeah, it is big.
Yeah. And I don't know about that one. I don't know if that one had, oh, look, here's a picture of it right here. How do I share this to show you guys?
Mike Baker will let you.
Is
Yeah,
there some
you can
dimensions
share
on that?
already, but probably not with
There's
Mike
no
sharing.
dimensions, but visually you could see the size, and it's probably right up there with the front facade of the Ross sign. The Joanne is pretty big. I mean, I could probably have somebody scale it and figure it out.
How do you want to proceed with this?
I
Mike?
don't think that's really necessary yet. I'd like to hear the whole presentation first before we get into that, but I don't think it is out of line with that, Joanne. I agree with you, but I think I have some other issues.
Yeah.
So I'd like
Okay.
to keep going if we could.
Then I'll continue with, there is under canopy sign, you'll see at the bottom of your sheet says UCH. That sign is another 7.35 feet.
I don't
Where-
see, The
Where
picture,
is that one, Mike? UCH.
Like, where's that one go? Where does? It is.
Yeah, where's
That's,
on which?
that's the
is that on
sign.
S?
That's the sign that literally, so you know, if you're walking through a strip mall, the one that you see right in the doorway. So if you look to the left, you're like, where is Ross? And you look and it'll be right,
It's C on.
it's
Right
right
here.
under there.
Hanger? Is,
Yeah.
It'll be right here.
oh, so there was that one. Is there one on each side?
No, there's just one of those.
Just
If you-
double
Oh,
sided,
wait,
double
so
sided.
Can you scroll down to S2, Mike, the next page down? So that's it hanging right off.
Right there.
That's number S1. Okay, that's that one.
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
And that's also 8 square feet?
That is
No,
7.
it's 7.2.
I calculated it as 7.35, so it's somewhere in that neighborhood.
what's the, back up, what's the thing that's labeled either a B or an 8?
That's it. It's,
This?
it's labeled 8. C
Okay,
and,
well then,
oh, no, it's not labeled B, it's labeled C, I think.
well, there's one that's labeled S1, and then to the
On
south,
the S, on the S2, it's labeled as S1.
and then there's, to the southwest of that, there's 8 or B, 8, I guess.
That's just a color band.
Yeah, just the blue color.
If I could just, so S1, the S1 sign is the main facade sign. The Ross, that's the Ross Dress for Less branding. That's their sign. That's all over the country, even including Puerto Rico. That's their signage. The 2 wall plaques that are 8 square feet each that you see on either side of those. Again, that's also standard branding for Ross Dress for Less. As is the under canopy. Well, here it's not an under canopy. Here it's more of a projecting sign off the building. Where it's capable of doing it, it literally goes under that, right above the front doors, underneath the canopy there, if there is a canopy. That's typically where that sign goes. In this case, it's not able to go under there. They don't have that canopy type overhang. So they're proposing it goes on the side right there to the right.
Okay, everybody good right now?
Yep.
I guess so.
Okay, those are all of the signs that we need to be concerned about. The rest of these signs that are coming soon and whatnot, that is also handled by our regular sign law. And I'll speak to Tina about what has to be done with that. But that's not anything the planning board needs to decide on. If I take all of the signs that we just went through and add them together, I come up with 313.85 square feet.
So, before we get into that, so you're saying that all of the other things that were discussed in the packet, the window stuff, those are the temporary signs that will be addressed by our code, right?
Correct.
Including the window signs that probably take up more than 30% of the area?
Yes, I'll take care of that via, as that it's considered a temporary signs, because in the Cayuga Mall sign development area, that also,
Right.
it also talks about temporary signs on Roman numeral
Okay.
4D. It says, upon opening of a new business, said signage shall conform with all applicable village sign laws. And then,
Okay,
so I'll end up dealing with that, and I'll end up
Okay.
I'll talk to Tina about that.
all right.
Also,
you're-
just so you know, they're not necessarily proposing all those signs. That's literally their standard packet that they put together, and then whatever we can use, they'll, you know what I mean, whatever they're allowed to do, they'll do, but that's not necessarily they want all of those signs.
Okay, but I'll end up reviewing that with you, Tina, what they can
Yeah, yeah.
have and with
Yeah,
the
we'll go
temporary
through.
signs. So what the planning board, what you have now is, Tina's proposing 313.8 square feet. And the planned sign area allows two accessory or one primary and two accessory signs not to exceed 150 square feet. So what happens here is the planning board has got to figure what is reasonable. If they want to go with the 313.85, that's fine. You can go with it, but it'll still end up having to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a variance. Anything over that 150 square feet will have to go for a variance. So it's up to the planning board to figure what it would be reasonable in this case.
I want to share that.
Oh, yeah, let me share this really quick, Mike.
Yep, I'll get up here.
I'll kick you off, don't worry.
Yeah, I know you will.
So that's the current, current, it's not actually there on the building anymore, but that's what it looked like.
And I would have to agree with Tina that it's similar to what's
I do too.
they're proposing.
Yeah,
Now, I agree.
there was nothing on the side of the building, and there wasn't anything between there and Ace.
Right, right.
So that was pretty much their signage there. Who's got questions for Tina?
And just that reminder that that front sign I calculated is 164.5 square feet.
So that still requires then a variance, is what you're saying?
It would require a 14-foot variance, yeah. 14
Okay.
square foot variance.
Okay. May I speak?
Yes.
Okay. I have no problem at all whatsoever with the storefront. But I do have a lot of problem with some of the other signage, specifically the side signage. Just because they're on a corner, Target's on a corner, I don't like setting a precedent for that. I don't think it's necessary in a village our size. I believe the pylon covers that. And I believe that when we have a store that somebody wants to come to, what with today's search ability and whatnot, that it's totally unnecessary. And it just, I find it a visual assault, frankly. I just think there's just overkill here with most of the other signs involved, frankly. That one I'm particularly disturbed by. And I don't see the need for the two Little Ross on the front. I know we do get concerns from other people saying, well, this is our corporate image and all of that, but you know what? It's already in violation, and I don't see how it adds to the situation. I think we have in the past, I recall when we did, honestly, Applebee's, we even went over the fact that their awnings had logo. And I think in order to be fair to the other merchants in our town, we need to not be lowering our standards. But I agree that the front is totally appropriate.
Yeah.
If I can just sum up what Lisa had said, if you leave just that front storefront, the one sign that's on the facade over top of the front doors, and you take away the side large sign, and you take away the two small Ross signs, but you leave the one that's overhanging, the canopy sign, so to speak, you're at 171.85.
How do the other board members feel about the sign?
I totally agree with Lisa. When I looked at these plans and saw this signage, I thought it was total overkill. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there a mural on the end of the building?
I think there is now.
Rover. Yeah.
So,
It's towards the, yeah, I'll show you.
but
It's like halfway.
it's still there, right?
Yeah.
And I think that having a sign on the end of that building would be a real eyesore, to be perfectly honest. And also those smaller signs, it's just not necessary. And the other smaller sign hanging out, I think the signage on the front is plenty. You can see it from everywhere. And it's the only store like that we would have up here besides Target.
So wait, so there's a mural on the side of that building where they were proposing that other sign?
Yeah, it's like right around here. I don't know if you can see right around here somewhere.
Ah, okay. They might not know that.
Yeah.
It's more, Tina, for me, it's more a matter of setting a precedent for other corner stores. You know, we've just not allowed it. And I really don't think it's necessary under these circumstances, but certainly I'm one vote here, so, but
Well, can I chime in?
Yep, go for it, Jeff.
Actually, two votes because I am in complete agreement with what Lisa has said, and including Lorraine's additional point. I think the sign over where Joanne is perfectly adequate. The sign on the side of the building is going too far. The pylon sign lets people know, hey, yeah, this is the right shopping mall if you want to go to Ross, but they're right in the front, so people are going to see it anyway. And the other signs in the windows and the sort of little hanging sign, again, I don't think they're necessary.
I'm pretty much in agreement. I think the primary sign is really all they need.
Camila?
Absolutely same.
Yeah. I feel the same way too, so I mean, it kind of sounds like,
So we're also omitting the low hanging sign.
Yes.
yeah, so, and that's what I was, so, right, nothing on the side of the building, the two small signs that are, you know, on the building, on the left and right, and also the one that kind of juts out. There's just nothing else like that in this plaza here anyway, on
You
any
know-
of the,
Totally out of character.
yeah.
I think if this were not the first building you go by as you come into the mall, I would consider that hangar, as you said, Tina, when somebody's walking down the
Right.
strip, they would see, oh, wait, there's Ross down there. But it's the first one. They're not going to miss it. You're number one in line. And I think, as I said, you know, it's kind of different now that people just say, oh, I want to go to Ross, or I know there's a Ross somewhere. They're going to Google it and they're going to find you.
Yeah.
And I think the
That's,
big sign
that's
is
exactly what
fine.
those, and like I said, so typically, if Ross has, so kind of like the same as Ace and the sign of same as Aldi, that sign would be a hanging sign, like right over the door under that little overhang. That's typically what they do. In this case, though, they don't have that. So I guess that's
Yeah.
why they were
I mean,
proposing the actual projecting sign from the building.
And as a practical matter, if you've parked your car, you've seen the big sign that says Ross Drive, the Ross sign that's way up there. You don't really need that hanging sign by the door because you know where you're going.
Right. Now, and like she said, it's because they're the first store when you come in, it's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you don't
I'm-
have that recessed walkway, so it's, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would support, so what's the main sign there, Mike? It's almost 162 and a half square feet?
164 and a half.
164 and a half. I would be, you know, and that fits, if you take a look at that, it's roughly, if you look at the lines
No, it's
here,
fine.
it's pretty comparable to what was there for Joanne in what the other, it looks like, at least, you know, Mike would have to do measurements if we really wanted to, but that looks pretty in character, size-wise and everything with the rest of the buildings that are in that mall on the way down. So I would support approving that piece of it, but not the other ones. Just my opinion.
Subject to a variance.
Yeah, obviously subject to the variance, it would have to go to,
And honestly, if they wanted to make it go smoother, just keep it to 150, do as of right, and then you don't have to come back again.
yeah, right, yeah, if you can shrink it down a little bit.
A very little bit.
Well, very little bit, yeah.
It's not going to be much smaller at all.
Yeah, so that's an option too, Tina, if, you know, if we say, yeah, we're good with, you know, approving the 160 for whatever it is, which is, you know, 14 feet over, if you can shrink that down 14 feet, then it, you know, it meets the requirements for the planned sign area, and you don't need to go to the BZA.
Right.
Is this just a,
Yeah, you don't need I don't think you need a resolution or anything like that, so.
You're gonna need the variance, so I guess it just depends what they want, or if they want to submit a revised site
yeah,
plan.
so I don't know what your
Mike at
thoughts are,
150.
Tina.
Well, it's definitely not my decision. I have to go back to them
Yeah,
and talk to them about it, and let's see what they decide they want to do.
okay.
What I'll do, Tina, is I'll write this up for you in email next couple days, and then I'll also send over what the requirements are for temporary signs, since you have all of this.
Okay.
So if you
Yeah,
gotta,
I mean-
if you gotta submit it, you have everything you need.
Yeah, I know they typically like to do, once this, as the store is kind of under construction, they'll like to put like a coming soon.
Right.
Something they'll, maybe if they like to put the tenant panel in when they're, doing the build out. And sometimes they like to put like a little corner, like little coming soon on the tenant panel, stuff like that. Yeah. That package, I don't know why they show all of those signs. Those are just the different variations of the signs that they like to use, but they don't use them all. So I've told them before, I don't know why you guys put them all in there.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll talk to them tomorrow and I'll keep a lookout, Mike, for your email and I'll keep you posted.
Okay. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you everyone for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you, Tina.
Okay, next item on the agenda is to open up the public hearing for lot line change number 2025-4835. BorgWarner Ithaca LLC is proposing to reconfigure lot lines of parcels solely owned by their company. The lots involved are located on the north side of Lomax Drive and include 78 Warren Road. The proposed plat changes can be viewed at the Village of Lansing office. Mike?
Yeah, I'll come out.
Entertain a motion. Yeah, I'll entertain a motion to close, open the public hearing. Motion by Pat,
Second.
second by Lorraine, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, take it away, Mike. Hey, Mike. I sprawled out, I didn't know if you were coming out.
First of all, I do have all the mailings. David Huckle sent all those out to all the contingent parcels. This is somewhat odd because the definition, well, first of all, you have to, it's a minor or a major subdivision. The definition is somewhat odd, and we're somewhat in a transition period of, first of all, definition of a subdivision is by creating another lot, which they're doing here. But at this point in the village law, we have no other way of handling just a lot line change. We will in another few weeks. David, if you waited another month, we would have had a month. But so be it. This is how we have to handle it. So the planning board needs to, first of all, declare whether this is a minor or a major subdivision. By definition, I mean, you can figure it out that it's a major or minor subdivision. And then if David's got anything else to add, or anyone else has anything to add as far as what's happening with these lots, it's slightly confusing. That's why you have a section in the upper right-hand corner that actually tells you what the new lots are going to look like. Natalie had brought up a good point that because of the municipal line between the village and the town, you are technically, you have landlocked parcels there. So it's all kind of by definition. What Natalie had proposed is that we add something into the resolution, if this were to be approved, that states something similar to the proposed parcels B and B are landlocked due in part to municipal boundary. As a condition of the subdivision, any future surveyance of parcel E and parcel B must include a tax map parcel with frontage on a public highway or street, or a deeded right-of-way access to a public highway or street. Further, the applicant will not convey their adjacent parcels in such a way that would landlock parcel E and parcel B. And if you have questions about that, Natalie can explain why we're putting that in there.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess with that, right, like Mike mentioned, just in case you don't remember, this is one of the things that we talked about, and it was mostly Natalie and Mike, coming up with a change to village code or through, I guess, is it a local law or is it just code?
It's going to be a local law.
It would be a local law that in the future, if it was a month down the road, the Board of Trustees are looking at the proposed language that we developed and sent to them on, I think, Monday. They'll open up a public hearing and vote on at some point, and in the future, this won't even come to the planning board, so.
Well, in the future, this one would probably still come to the
Well,
planning
this
board,
one
so
might,
don't feel
but
so bad,
yeah, a
Dave.
normal lot line change would not, but this
Because
is,
in the proposed lot line, you can't create or maintain landlocked parcels.
Right.
So this would still come to us, most likely for us to put a similar condition in, that while they're technically probably indeed the same parcel because it crosses the municipal boundary, it creates a landlocked tax map parcel. In theory, you could sell off E, creating an island of a landlocked parcel. So that's why we want to avoid things like that. And I understand there may be reasons why you don't want to consolidate A, B, and E together, because they may not necessarily track for your use, but that's why we added the condition there. We just don't want E and B to be left alone out there in the middle of the field.
And this is a type 2 action, so you need all EAF and also GML 239.
anything you want to add, or?
No, I'm basically here to represent them. I'm not with Boardmore, but I'm their agent. They would have been here, but there was an emergency. I'm with Cushman and Wakefield, Pyramid Brokerage, the market manager, and I handle their real estate services. But this was basically done largely for two reasons: to clean up lot line boundaries. There's vacant land that, as you're well aware, is under contract to Park Grove. So we wanted to clean up those boundaries, but at the same time, I suggested there were other boundary lines cutting off parking lots and some other crazy stuff. So we had TG Miller take care of that at the same time. There's a smaller manufacturing plant. It's not so small. It's 225,000 square feet. The larger one remains as is in the town. There's also a tech center and group offices that we've also tried to segregate that parcel. So we've tried to basically clean up the lot lines.
Brent?
Yeah, just wanted to point out a detail that probably has no bearing on the current thought process of subdividing, but we can anticipate maybe what might be coming along in the future, and that's that lots or parcel C cuts through an existing stormwater retention basin for the factory. And so if that becomes, if that property gets sold, then there would need to be some kind of a stormwater management agreement that would help, would detail how either who's going to take care of that, or, it seems like it's something that Borg Warner has an obligation to, and it seems like they would need to retain their obligation or come up with some kind of other solution, which certainly not, I don't think it's necessary to dictate all that right now, but maybe if it's just, I don't know, is it David who's there in the meeting tonight?
Yes, I am, Brent.
Yeah. Hi, David. Somehow just make so that we know that I don't know if anybody thought of it. If they have, maybe they're already got some kind of strategy, but if they hadn't thought of it, it's something they want to think about. If what we know, what we think might be going on continues to, move that direction.
Yeah, and I think that would be right. That would be if something were to happen with that property in the future, right? Right now, we're not here to discuss that. We're here to discuss, the owners want to subdivide the property, they can do that. Great. If something were to happen on that property and that was impacted, right, that would generally be a general condition or something. We would definitely discuss that. It would potentially be a condition on any special permit or anything that before we grant it.
And Mike and I have discussed it. I discussed it with Borg. We've had extensive discussions with Park Grove, so everybody's on the same page and working towards the same goal that I think you as a village would have with respect to that retention program.
So Brent, is that the one that kind of goes through all three of those parcels on the west side? The retention
I only have
pond?
a little portion of it in front of me right now. I don't have the full-size
Yeah,
map, so.
it looks like that to me, like it continues
It goes through
along.
E, B, and C, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, okay, I just wanted to be sure I knew knew what we were talking about. Okay, great, good to keep in mind.
I highlighted mine in blue if that,
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yep, there you go. That's the one. Yep, okay, good.
I think Mike might be bringing it up so people can look, just so you're sure, but yeah. Other comments from folks while Mike's bringing that up?
There it is. Okay.
So E is above that, but yeah, you can see the part of it in B and C there.
Yeah, this is your stormwater pond area, and this is the section we're talking about.
Right. Okay.
I mean, this might not be completely accurate, but this is where the pond is in this area.
So thanks, Mike, for bringing that up. If folks don't have questions, I know for special permits and things, we usually do keep the public hearing open for 2. For, subdivisions and things like that, we have done them in 1 before, so if folks are comfortable closing it out tonight, more than willing to. If folks are not comfortable and want to collect more information and keep it open for another meeting, we can. I'm good. Lisa, Jim, Ryan's good.
I'm fine. I'm fine with closing it.
Okay. Jim?
I don't have a preference one way or the other.
Okay. Then in that case, I would entertain a motion to close the public comment period. Public hearing, I keep saying public comment period. Motion by Pat.
Second.
Second by Lorraine, all in favor?
Aye.
And then, I just have this here, right? So we did the proof of mailings, there's no seeker. We found it a type 2 action for seeker purposes. There's no EAF, there's no general conditions or seeker resolution or anything. So I think it's just the resolution that folks have in front of them. So I will read it off and yeah. So this is the Village of Lansing Planning Board resolution for final plat approval of minor subdivision number 2025-4835, adopted on January 28th, 2025. Whereas this matter involves final plat approval consideration of the following proposed action, BorgWarner LLC is proposing to reconfigure lot lines of parcels solely owned by their company. The lots involved are located on the north side of Lomax Drive and include 780 Warren Road. And B, on January 28, 2025, the Village of Lansing Planning Board, in accordance with subsection D of section 125-5 of the Village of Lansing Code, 1, reviewed the sketch plan submitted with respect to this proposed action, and 2, classified the proposed subdivision as a minor subdivision. And C, the planning board finds this to be a type 2 action for seeker purposes. And D, on January 28, 2025, the Village of Lansing Planning Board held a public hearing regarding this proposed action, and thereafter thoroughly reviewed and analyzed, 1, the proposed final subdivision plat and accompanying materials and information presented by and on behalf of the applicant in support of this proposed action, including information and materials related to environmental issues, if any, which the board deemed necessary or appropriate for its review. All other information and materials rightfully before the board, and all issues raised during the public hearing and or otherwise raised in the course of the board's deliberations. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. Based upon all of its foregoing review and action, it is hereby determined by the Village of Lansing Planning Board that approval of the proposed action for the proposed BorgWarner minor subdivision is granted or denied, subject to the conditions and requirements set forth below. We do have A, which is the one that we talked about. The proposed parcels E and B are landlocked due in part to a municipal boundary. As a condition of the subdivision, the future conveyance of parcel E and parcel B must include the tax map parcel with frontage on a public highway or street, or a deeded right-of-way access to a public highway or street. Further, the applicant shall not convey their adjacent parcels in such a way that would landlock parcel E or B. And then 2, the chairperson of the Village of Lansing Planning Board is hereby authorized and directed to sign final plat for the approved minor subdivision in accordance with subsection G of section 125-6 and subsection A of 125-15 of the Village of Lansing Code. I will entertain a motion to grant the minor subdivision.
Quick question. Where does the portion where we talk about the stormwater retention pond?
So that's not part of the subdivision. That would be something that if somebody came in to do something on that property, that would be a condition of a special permit. That's when that would happen, yeah. It could sit there forever.
Great.
Okay.
I move we approve.
Motion to grant by Pat.
Second.
Second by Lorraine, all in favor?
Aye.
very much. You're all set. Do you have stuff for me to sign, Mike? Right, we can do that after the meeting?
I can connect up.
Okay. Yeah, I'll sign the stuff and he'll have everything for you.
Where to find them.
Sign these now, or are you gonna wait?
I can sign them.
Yeah.
Because I remember the date. That's why.
Thank you.
Chair one underneath that. Okay, continuing on. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing for special permit number 2025-5836. The Southern Cayuga Lake Intermunicipal Water Commission is planning to upgrade the electrical control equipment at the raw water pumping station located at Bolton Point Road, tax parcel number 42.1-1-37.1. I will entertain a motion to open up the public hearing.
So moved.
Oh, motion by Lisa. Second by Lorraine. All in favor?
Right.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, let me get my bearings here a second. Okay, what I've done with this is I have sent out a GML 239 to the county. That was sent out last week. That normally takes 30 days. But I do figure that we'll probably end up doing 2 meetings for this this proposal. I'm going to let whoever's here to represent Bolton Point to discuss what is going to be what they're proposing to do with this 20 by 20 pole barn. And I know that, well, we welcome back Brent Cross. We haven't seen him since, I think, 2022, maybe. It seems like that. But it's good to have him back. This is his expertise, and I know he has a few questions to ask. So I'll let you guys take it away, whether Greg wants to or whoever else wants to take this away.
Thank you. I'll start, Greta may correct me if I'm wrong. The project undertaking, the raw water pump station down at the lake pumps raw water from the lake up to the water treatment plant, where it's treated and distributed to the member communities of the commission. The electrical switchgear in the raw water pump station is approaching 50 years old and needs to be replaced. However, everyone here likes their water. We all like our potable water, so we can't turn the water off to rip out the old switchgear and put in new switchgear. So usually in these situations of critical infrastructure, we will construct the new and then cut over the old gear to the new to minimize the disruptions to the member communities. That's a matter of public health. It's a matter of public safety. The addition here is Bolton Point investing in their infrastructure to ensure the continued availability of potable water to its member communities. So it requires an addition to the building. We also want the new switchgear out of the damp, call it the process area of the pump station, just to make sure just to ensure the long life, so we don't have to do this again anytime soon. So that's the purpose of the project. It requires a building addition, it requires some fill to create a level area, so we can construct the building addition. And that's a brief for the project description.
Great, thanks, Greg. Brent?
Okay, so I did get a chance to speak to Greta very late this afternoon, and we kind of went over some of my general concerns, so I won't take up a lot of time with you tonight, but just kind of to touch on some things. I hadn't had a chance or hadn't had a conversation with Natalie, but I found it to be unusual that Bolton Point had already gone through and declared lead agency, and kind of sort of preempting the planning board's opportunity to do that. I guess maybe it sounds like maybe there's a nuance between what their action might have been a lead agency for the decision to have an action by an intermunicipal government agency that they had to take. But I think in having spoken to Greta today, that they're not looking to oppose for us to do our own purposes for the special permit approval. So I think that it appeared as though there was some kind of maybe just a lack of communication there. So that's kind of not an engineering question, but I thought I did have that conversation. So moving on to technical aspects of it, Mike, Scott and I talked, and I don't think that there's ever been a project in a floodplain area in the village. In fact, there's new FEMA maps that have just come out, which kind of reorganizes or designates flood areas, and the village will eventually be putting together a new local law or resolution to address that. But in the meantime, it's doing my best to try to put two and two together here. There's two things that are going on with this project that seem to be noteworthy for the village, and that the first one is that there's some stream bank stabilization going on within the this is where it gets a little bit hard to know exactly who's the prevailing agency, but depending on whether you're talking about the village regulation, the old village regulations, or the Army Corps regulations, but there's two different lines that we're dealing with. One is the flood line, forgotten even the terminology, but there's one line that's the flood line, and then there's the other, which is called the daily high water mark. And so it's the amount of fill that's being put into the floodable area. The floodable zone is different than the amount of fill that's being put into the high water mark. And so it was explained to me by Greta that they have already been to Army Corps of Engineers and have been issued a permit which covers them for the nationwide permit, which they don't actually need to seek a permit for. It's if they meet the regulations, they're covered, is the nationwide permit number 13, which addresses the stream, the slope stabilization. And in the definition that's provided by Army Corps of Engineers, they're allowed to add up to 1 cubic foot of soil to each lineal foot of shoreline in the process of stabilizing the bank. That is within the daily high water mark, as opposed to the amount of soil that's being added, proposed to be added within the floodable area, for lack of a better word, I think it's the old fashioned term for 100-year flood. So it's a little bit confusing. I think they might have it under control. I believe Greta was going to send us a copy of a permit that they have been issued by the Army Corps of Engineers, and I'd like to take a look at that. I suspect that they've done a thorough job, but it's just so unusual for us, and I'm kind of a little bit cautious, I guess is the right word, on what we're dealing with here. So I think there was a discussion a few moments ago about whether it's likely to keep this hearing open for another month, and I think that would be wise for us to be able to just go over this with a fine-tooth comb, just to make sure that everything that they're telling us is what I can confirm to represent to the village. And
Yeah,
then,
so we definitely will keep this open for a second meeting, for sure.
Yeah. On a more normal topic, I have taken a look at the site for stormwater management, and the amount of soil disturbance is a fairly small amount that doesn't come close to triggering any kind of full SWIP. So we won't be looking for that. And the impervious area is even, very small. So it's very unlikely that there'll be any real stormwater issues as a result of this project, but that I think for consistency with all of our past decisions, we've always asked for applicants, even though they're not required to do so for compliance with full DEC stormwater regulations, we always ask them to take a look at the green practices that are in the design manual and try to incorporate 2 out of and I don't know if I think the inventory has changed, but 2 out of the entire list incorporate something into the plan that shows that they've basically made a good faith effort to do stormwater management. And I mentioned that to Greta, and I think that's probably going to be not going to be a problem for them, but she really didn't have a chance to take a look at that before the meeting tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. Just to jump in quick, we're gonna have to circle back with Bolton Point on any design changes like that. Given the very minimal amount of disturbance and the very, very minimal, the 400 square feet of new impervious on site, we're gonna have to make sure that, take a look at the list and see what, if anything, we can do, but we'll get back to you after we circle back on that. Regarding green infrastructure.
Mike?
I just wanted to add a couple things for what Brent had to say is one of the reasonings for coming to the board for the special permit, because this is located in your combination combination combining district in the unique natural area. And in general, the planning board will usually require a botanist to go through and check for fauna and flora. But I just want to let the board know that there was a short EAF provided, and with that there's a part 3 that summarizes a lot of the sporting information. A lot of this is taken care of and summarized in number 9, where it describes the type of flora and fauna that will be located within that area. So I kind of wanted to put that out because that is normally what the planning board will end up doing for the unique natural area. And I believe that's all I had for that.
Lisa?
So one of, well, there are a couple of things, actually, yeah, when I saw that in the secret mentioned well, in the very small print, and then that was addressed about the animals, it was sort of like, when was any of this stuff seen or last? I don't know. But the one thing that, not being any close to being an engineer, but given that we're seeing extraordinary floods and things, is this even high enough now to take us into the future is what I'm wondering. Does Cayuga Lake get controlled levels of, I mean, do they really?
Yes. Cayuga
Oh, it
Lake,
does.
yeah, Cayuga Lake and Seneca Lake levels are controlled. The
They
two
are,
lakes
okay.
are operated on an operating diagram, and they're controlled by the Canal Corp.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I thought that was my first thing is, okay, is this really going to be high enough? Because everybody's thinking, oh, this is great, but guess what? We're having 100-year floods now every 2 years or something. And so that was one of my thoughts. And the other was about asking about, so this number 9 was addressed by, when was it that it was looked at, the flora and the fauna?
April 2022.
Yeah, okay. And that was when it said that there are no recent reports of the species near the project area. Okay. But all right, so as long as the lake is controlled, I thought it was, but I wanted to be sure about that.
Yeah, Mike Baker, I'll also add that when you get the report back from the county, they generally will also suggest requiring those 2 green practices that Brent had also mentioned. It's been pretty common that they put that in on a project like this.
Yeah.
Didn't we add it to our special permit conditions? I thought we did. We decided to add that as a condition for all ongoing special permits, no?
Yeah, we were just talking about that. I don't think we've done if we're going to, that'll be a different discussion, if we're actually going to do all of these, or I know we discussed that, but.
Yeah, we discussed just having a list to check off.
Yeah, it's on the list of things that we make sure we don't forget about.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Other comments from planning board members or questions?
Yeah. Okay. You just had listed that the electrical room will be air conditioned to control humidity. How is that being done?
It'll be a split system, just to with a condenser outside.
And then the other question I have is, I was looking at the detail for your stake planting.
Oh, yes, that was interesting.
Yeah, so I love that you guys are doing this, and I would also caution that stakes 3 foot on center is gonna be really sparse, and sometimes stake plantings don't always take. They have a higher failure rate sometimes, so it might be, I don't know, advisable to do something a little bit more dense to account for, the failure rate there, and just to make sure that you get more root growth quicker.
Yeah, we can take a look at that density of the plantings. The 3 foot on center is the typical offset that we'll use, but certainly.
Which totally makes sense for, a B&B or a container, but the failure rate on these is a little bit higher, so it might be worth just looking into a denser planting or a secondary planting after a certain period. Because I was looking, your timetable is actually pretty condensed. I saw that you have that, you'll be pulling the cofferdams once once the plantings are established and the vegetation is stabilized. Does that mean you're looking to get some root growth in there before you remove the cofferdam?
Let me just pull that up. I don't think that's the intent. So typically we'll have the contractor pull the cofferdams after site work is complete. But I don't see root growth happening for probably another growing season.
Okay.
Yeah, usually the cofferdam would be just to do the work that would otherwise be in the wet, just to dewater the, and then.
Okay.
Mike, since it's a special permit and we have to abide by the tree law, are we set on density there, and is that something we need to look at?
You're muted.
No, we're good.
Question.
No, we're obviously gonna leave it open, so.
Okay. Okay, any other comments or questions of anybody? Okay, so like I said, yeah, for these, we do typically keep them open for 2 meetings, so we can end back up at the next meeting.
Mike, did you want to go over part 1 of the EAF in case there's any changes or anything that need to be made for the next meeting?
Yeah, we can do that. I think everybody has a copy in front of them, right? Okay. So does the proposed, and so some of this is kind of labeled in the other areas. Does the proposed action only involve the legislative adoption of a plan, local law, ordinance, administrative rule, or regulation? No. If no, continue to question 2. Does the proposed action require permit approval of funding from any other government agency? If yes, list them. So there's the Tompkins County Health Department for design approval, New York State DEC Section 401 and Article 15 permits, the Army Corps of Engineers Section 10 and 404 permits, Village of Lansing local floodplain development permit, NISOG state-owned land underwater permit, and the New York State Canal Corps occupancy and work permit. So those are the other departmental agencies. Total acreage of the site of proposed action, 0.77 acres. Total acreage to be physically disturbed, about 0.2 acres. Total acreage for everything, 0.77. Check all land uses that occur on, are adjoining, or near the proposed action. They checked forest, rural, aquatic, and other, for other public water supply. Any comments on that? Is the proposed action a permitted use under the zoning regulations? Yes. Consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan? Yes. Is the proposed action consistent with the predominant character of the existing built or natural landscape? Yes. Is the site of the proposed action located in, or does it adjoin a state-listed critical environmental area? No. Will the proposed action result in a substantial increase in traffic above present levels? No. Are public transportation services available at or near the site of the proposed action? No. Are any pedestrian accommodations or bicycle routes available on or near the site of the proposed action? No. Does the proposed action meet or exceed the state energy code requirements? Yes. Will the proposed action connect to an existing public-private water supply? Yes. Will the proposed action connect to existing wastewater utilities? No. If no, describe the method the proposed project will not generate wastewater. Does the proposed site contain or is it substantially contiguous to a building, archaeological site, or district which is listed on the National or State Register of Historic Places, or that has been determined by the Commissioner of the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation to be eligible for listing on the State Register of Historic Places? No. Is the project site or any portion of it located in or adjacent to an area designated as sensitive or archaeological sites on the New York State Historic Preservation Office Archaeological Site Inventory? No. Does any portion of the site of the proposed action or lands adjoining the proposed action contain wetlands or other water bodies regulated by a federal, state, or local agency? Yes. Will the proposed action physically alter or encroach into any existing wetland or water body? Yes. A wetland delineation was completed in April 2022. No freshwater wetlands were identified within the project site. 1 stream and 2 stormwater drainage channels were observed outside of the proposed limits of disturbance. Site elevation and shoreline revetment will involve fill below the ordinary high water elevation. Mean high water level of Cayuga Lake. That's all listed there. And that's why the typical habitat types that occur on or are likely to be found on the project site, check all that apply, shoreline and forest. Does the site of the proposed action contain any species of animal or associated habitats listed by state or federal government as threatened or endangered? Yes. Northern log-eared bat, monarch butterfly, lake sturgeon, Drummond's rock bass, yellow giant, hyssop. I think that's everything. Is the project site located in the 100-year floodplain? Yes. Will the proposed action create stormwater discharge either from point or non-point sources? Yes. Will stormwater discharge flow to adjacent properties? Yes. Will stormwater discharge be directed to established conveyance systems, runoff and storm drains? No. New building addition will result in a small increase in impervious surface. Stormwater will be directed to Cayuga Lake. Appropriate erosion and sediment control measures will be implemented during construction to prevent turbid runoff from entering the lake. Does the proposed action include construction or other activities that would result in the impoundment of water or other liquids? No. Has the site of the proposed action or an adjoining property been the location of an active or closed solid waste management facility? No. Has the site of the proposed action or an adjoining property been the subject of remediation, ongoing or completed for hazardous waste? No. Any comments about any of that? Did everybody get a chance to read over the supporting information so that I don't have to read over it all for everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I can if you all want me to.
Please don't.
Okay, there you go. So I guess that's good then, so, yeah. Anything else, Mike or Brent or Natalie? Okay, we will see you at the next meeting then. You can get in touch with Mike and Brent to work on just a couple little things that were brought up.
Thank you. Will do.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is other business. Planning board will host a discussion with David Fernandez from Cayuga Landscape about the village tree law. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
The fourth time.
Yeah, you know, well, we appreciate it 4 times.
Back from the 80s. So let's see, I'm here with Athena Kanzan, who's a horticulturalist, and we'll be working through the landscape. What's the best format? Should I sit you on?
Wherever you're comfortable.
So we met with Lisa and Lorraine about a month ago to discuss just being a resource for tree planting, understanding some of the confusing things, some of the revolution in tree planting successfully over the last 20, 25 years, since we first were planting here with Carol Kamen and some of the early board members around the village roads. Many of the trees actually that were planted along Triphammer Road years ago were done. In maybe 1985, there was a program to sponsor tree planting throughout the streets of the village of Lansing by, I think they offered $50 a tree as a little bonus, the village did in that era. And so there was a wide, I would say a broad tree planting program that lasted for a few years. And subsequently, we've done design build work with John Courtney and DPW in, well, creating the tree planting and landscaping around this building, but also avenues like the entrance to Shannon Park, where there's a successful planting of columnar oaks. So I guess we're curious, what is the best way to give you a hand? We have some resources that I think maybe you could pass out. Unfortunately, I don't know, but we have version 1 resources that are given to Lisa and Lorraine, but did not get them distributed to everyone.
No, that's okay.
Is there something that I can scan over?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure.
No, because they made some revisions, so it's more updated.
I actually have extras you can take.
And I'm gonna drive right by Lisa's house on the way home, so if you want, I can drop off.
Oh, that would be really nice. Okay.
Love it.
Lisa will appreciate that, because
I will. So is this, so it's not our big, long one that I have already?
no, David and Athena made updates, Lisa, to what we had.
Okay.
So the materials that we're passing out include a spreadsheet of appropriate trees for village tree planting in different situations. And it indicates what some of the tolerances and intolerances might be, which trees are native, which are not native, separately listed invasive plants. And to go through the list in depth would probably take too long for this meeting. But I thought there was just, we also have a sample plant list, because as members of the planning board, you often get a plan, a plant list, and sometimes really understanding what's on that plant list can be difficult. And sometimes the planting itself may end up being, well, it could be disappointing or not what you were expecting. And so just understanding the sizes, the forms of the trees that are specified, how they're specified, what might be appropriate, what might not be, would be useful. So I was just going to briefly go through these things, but please just ask questions. So first of all, bald and burlap trees. The standard commercial size for a bald and burlap tree is 2 inch. It means 2 inch caliper, which is measured 6 inches above the ground. And the American nursery standards will have then a set volume for the root ball that has to go with that for it to be a legal tree to sell in the trade. And then there's certain things that evergreen trees are sold by height generally, not by caliper. So that would only be shade and flowering trees that are sold by caliper. And evergreen tree height generally is measured not to the tip of the tree, but to a little ways down, to halfway down on the leader. That's the final height. Shrubs and multi-stem trees, to be defined as a shrub or multi-stem tree, it must have at least 3 stems. A 2-stem shrub or clump does not meet specifications. Container-grown trees, and plants, years ago, you would hear the term gallons. A 1-gallon tree, a 2-gallon tree, and then the New York State Division of Weights and Measures got involved, and turns out that many of the gallons were not true gallons, so they've come up with specified sizes for what is a number 1 container, what is a number 2 container, and so forth. So one of the biggest revolutions in planting since I began, almost 50 years ago, was planting trees high enough so that the root flare was at the level of the ground or even a little bit above. There's an old saying in the nursery business, plant it high or watch it die. And trees generally will do better if planted a bit high than if submerged. So the worst when evaluating planting is to find that they've been planted too deeply and soil has been put on top of that root ball, whether it be from a container or bald and burlapped. And the other big revolution is the whole idea of establishing how important it is to have an adequate soil volume for the tree to ultimately grow. And Dr. Nina Bassick at Cornell has been revolutionary with the Urban Horticulture Institute and seeing why did trees in New York and so many other cities die. And so often it was the tree would grow to the edge of the pit and then the roots would stop and circle around. And the tree would ultimately fail as it got too big and its requirements for water became larger than the soil could support. So one standard that the village might consider is to have tree pits or beds that are either in which soil is replaced or at least is scarified, loosened, and amended. And the volumes are listed on the specifications here. And that can be a huge amount of soil. Athena, you did some research on this. Is this from?
Yeah, this is from Nina's research, and she has, I added the link to the research article that she published for that, and there's a calculation for certain planting sites to figure out how much soil you need for plantings. It's a helpful resource, even though I think it was published in the 90s, but still. Still rings true.
And so I think for our purposes, that's going to come most into play if we've got someone planting, say, in a parking lot or.
Yeah, that's what I was just like, I was thinking about our street trees even, I mean, like, yeah, there's,
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about a residential, different story, but that, like, anytime you're telling this parking lot, that's kind of like make or break.
It really is, and in some situations, like the Tompkins County Airport, we were the contractor who put in all those trees many years ago, and they had an excess of topsoil, so they backfilled with 3 feet of topsoil just to get rid of it, and all the plantings have done incredibly well. Whereas parking lot trees often can, at a certain size, tend to falter, and that's often because there are utilities and compacted soils and just not enough volume for those trees to survive. Some trees, of course, will survive under very tough conditions.
Right.
And Athena, what are some of those trees that you listed?
Yeah, we've noted, we actually have in the spreadsheet here on page 2, we have on compact street parking lot trees and trees that are really tough and can grow well in the smaller spaces. So that would be like the columnar European hornbeam. There are other tough trees like cornelian cherries that can grow really well in tough sites. And then there are some larger street and parking lot trees if you have a slightly larger island and are looking for ultimately some shade, which I know that we mentioned, or when we were talking with Lisa and Lorraine, like when you're parking in a parking lot, you go for that area that has the most shade. So having some of those trees in mind as well are also good for some larger sites and medians and things like that.
And some of those boulevard islands like Shannon Park, another example is Northwood Drive, the trees used were a columnar hybrid oak that had been developed partly at Cornell, which is mostly a native tree that stays to about a width of maybe 6 to 8 feet wide at the most. And at Northwoods, they are columnar hornbeams, which have, again, a similar size range, but are very tough and will endure a limited moving.
Yeah, we also listed plants that can also handle salt, which is a good consideration as well, especially for parking lots.
Yeah. Most of the village of Lansing is in a high lime area. When the glaciers came across central New York, they took the limestone of the northern Finger Lakes, ground it up, and spread it liberally over most of Lansing. We're not high enough to get into the acidic soils, so almost all trees have to be tolerant of alkaline soils to do well in the village. So some trees, like the regular pin oak or red maples, that are native red maple that has a red fall color, will tend to get chlorotic, which means they'll be yellowing between the veins of the leaves as they mature and are unable to, because of the high lime, get the nutrients they need. So choosing trees that will tolerate those alkaline soils is really critical in evaluating any plant list. Even a question to ask the presenter of a plan: are these trees tolerant of alkaline soils? And as contractors who do a lot of planting at Cornell, I often see plant lists that come from particularly landscape architecture firms from New England. They're in an acidic zone, so the plant palette they're comfortable with using and that they think of the most includes lots of plants that like acidic soil. And then to plant, they typically die here. And over the years, there are many such examples on campus, 3,000 low bush blueberries and Itea virginica and so forth. So ask the question, are the trees, are the plants tolerant of high lime soils? Because most of the soils here and most of the topsoil in our area is also relatively high lime. Sand is very high lime in this area. The nearest quarry that has acidic sand, you think of sand as being acidic, but the nearest quarry is about 100 miles away. And of course, it's not sustainable to be importing such acidic materials. Better to choose the plants that will survive in those conditions.
And we've noted on the attached document different trees and plants and shrubs that are undesirable within the landscape, like some that would not necessarily survive, like the Itea. new cultivar it's recently come out that's better with high pH soils, but just certain things to keep an eye out for on plants.
Another issue that I don't think is a village code, but maybe something to, and I may be wrong about this, but maybe something to look into in the future is scarification of the sites so that in general, all the plants will thrive, and the lawns and meadows will thrive. So the standard at Cornell for some years has been to scarify in 3 inches of compost over the entire site, especially if the site's been compacted by heavy equipment. And if you have a heavily compacted site and you spread 4 inches of topsoil, it's still a very heavily compacted site. So there's strategies for decompacting the soil so that you can get broad root growth and get trees that actually mature and thrive. It may be by using deep rippers, adding in compost. Usually a rototiller is not enough. It'll just sort of loosen the top few inches of soil.
And is that what scarifying? I've never heard that term.
That's what scarifying. Scarifying, it means to scratch. In this case, with soil, it means to deeply scratch, to deeply tear at the soil, to loosen it so that you get fractured soil for air and water to penetrate down to lower levels instead of just running out. So it also helps with that goal in the village of having water infiltrate into the groundwater instead of running off quickly. There's a technique that Dr. Bassick had come up with, which is called scoop and dump. So to dig out compacted soil and put in new soil is very expensive and sometimes is impractical over larger areas. So she had done research over years with a technique in which you leave the compacted, poor soil in place, spread a generous amount of compost or a different type of organic material, and then with an excavator, not people with rototillers, lift and simply drop it without doing anything else. That loosened the soil down to 18 inches and would allow for good root growth and plant growth. And it's a good technique when budget is an issue.
And with rototillers, it often makes the compaction worse. It creates kind of a hard pan where water and roots can't get through.
There are other things. Again, when establishing trees in areas where there's in pavement, let's say, the concrete, walkway or promenade along a mall, what is the best practice now is to install what's called we call it CU soil. And it's essentially crushed stone that has been mixed up with fine clay particles and a hydrophilic polymer, basically a simple polymer that holds and attracts water. By mixing that up and using it under the concrete before pouring the concrete, then the trees that are planted in that area the roots will grow out through the base. Otherwise, they're limited to the edge of the tree pit, and it's an impervious barrier. And so that's been demonstrated in many places, like the large trees, the London planes that go up the Ho Plaza toward Eurus Clock Tower is one example where that technique was used first around 1990. So just something, again, to consider in talking to those making presentations.
Okay. Wow.
It sounds like what we would want to do is, in addition to, our tree law, have a planting guideline that could be the appendix that.
That's what we're planning on.
Updated.
That's why David helped us with this, so.
Yeah.
Lisa and I can put this appendix together.
Yeah, no, that's outstanding, right? It's not applicable to be put into local law, neither is this per se, that would be terrible, but, right, as the appendices to say, hey, here are the guidelines, whether it's, in this case, planning guidelines, but same thing with design, construction, standards and guidelines to follow. And those those do regularly change over the time, whereas the intent of the law doesn't. Mm-hmm. That's outstanding. Thank you.
I will say that for maybe some of when we do like a development with parking lots and whatnot, I think maybe we could require decompaction or whatever. Or we should perhaps consider that for like in buffer strips and that kind of stuff. Maybe we should take a look at that.
Well,
Because
one
that
way-
seems,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I was gonna say, one way we can do that is by requiring a certain soil volume per tree. So if we say that you have to have X amount of soil volume, basically, it forces them to do that.
something, I think we should look at that and think about that, because especially for street trees and commercial settings, I'm thinking obviously. And it's great for letting people know, excuse me, in residential, because you want trees. And I think people would be more willing to do that, especially if it's new construction and they're moving this stuff around anyway. But I just want to say so thanks to Athena and David, because you have been so generous with your time. And I'm just still impressed with all of the effort that you put into this, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's a fantastic resource.
This is a lot of work.
It's such a big help to have like a list of plants.
Yeah, that's outstanding. I love the special notes that go along with them too. I'm like,
Yeah, no.
deer, where are the ones that say? Yeah, so that's outstanding.
Because even having recently moved from the Hudson Valley, the plants are very different here.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to learn how to work with your local climate.
And I moved here from New England, and I can attest to a lot of the stuff I grew there didn't here. Wasted a lot of money over the years.
So I just have questions. And looking at our tree lot, I don't know if you had a chance to look through it, but the board has kind of struggled historically with density of plantings on a lot and what is reasonable, and also kind of how much to, I'll say, micromanage the variety and the sizes and the types that go onto a lot. I don't know if you had any thoughts about how we've currently kind of maybe scaled it back a bit from what is on the books with our new proposed changes. We haven't really gone as into the understory, overstory, deciduous, evergreen, et cetera. Do you have any?
I did look at the tree law, and the first one at the outset in the purpose, you mentioned that one of the purposes is to maintain appropriate tree diversity to build forest resilience. So at least a basic rule might be don't reduce the diversity of species if, let's say, a lot has to be cleared to build a house, replant, or a commercial building, replant at least that many more, that number, reestablish that number of species. There are some peculiarities in the tree law, I noticed, that if trees are removed, one of the remedies is to contribute to the tree bank. Let's say, one of the general conditions for the tree planting plan, that is part, let's see, it's number 3, general conditions for tree planting plan. So all new trees must have a caliper size no less than 2 inch. This is measured by a caliper, then, the tree unit value of existing trees will be measured by DBH, which is diameter breast height. But then 4 shrubs of a minimum, this is part D, of a minimum 2-gallon size may be counted as 1 tree unit, which is an odd mix. It's just a little bit like saying 4 onions shall be equal to 1 sheep if you're in a market. And it reminds me of those, nursery tales of farmers who came back with nothing after trading down over and over. So it's just an odd, in other words, one easy out would be to just buy a whole bunch of 2-gallon shrubs and not replace the trees. So
I struggle with that one too.
Yeah, we've struggled in not wanting to overly dictate what a homeowner can, I'm thinking residential, really, like what a homeowner can put on their personal property if they really like shrubs. If they just want boxwoods everywhere, great, that's your house. I think you should be able to do that. But so I think that's where we kind of struggle in how much do you want to control, how much control the board wants to have.
And when this was originally being developed, there was quite a bit of discussion about number of shrubs and what they equal.
And now apparently 2 gallon is not even the right
There you go, right, it's not,
reference. It should be a number now.
Possibly could be higher, or, there are other ways of handling it, I suppose, that, well, the issue came up also, I had a conversation with the developer from Georgia who was thinking of buying the giant lot that goes from, up from the swim club down to the park. And there's thousands, uncounted thousands of ash trees and other trees that are crowded and not in good shape. And he's looking at the tree law and we're reading it together. And how do you possibly develop something like that while complying with the law? You have to put in roads, you have to put in driveways, and the whole thing is covered with trees at, 100 trees per 1,000 square feet or something. I mean, it's like dense thickets. And many of them, those what look like small trees are 4-inch caliper and therefore certainly count as a substantial tree according to this law. So it's almost like you need to somehow separate the standards for different situations. It's one thing if you're cutting all the trees in your backyard down and leaving a problem for your neighbors, but when there's a situation like that, maybe you have to look at it from a forestry standpoint instead of an individual tree standpoint. But just a future thought if the law is ever undergoes change.
Well, we're doing it right now. I mean, that we have, these red line versions of the actual law because kept butting up against things like that, like, wait a second, there are times where the things in the law make really good sense if you're a homeowner, but if you're a commercial developer, it's the other way, or the other way around, so we're trying to figure out how to craft this law so it applies broadly and reasonably to all the development that happens here, whether it's commercial or residential.
so now is the perfect time, right? That's like Yamina said, we're preparing a packet to forward on to the trustees for them to consider. And when not this one, because this isn't the original, this is the marked up one. When the original, it's been years since the original tree law was implemented, we've gotten a chance to put it into practice now a few times, and hear from, and have people who are interested in, buying a piece of property and what that would mean with them with the current tree law in effect, or we've applied it to residential, we've applied it to commercial, and what if we, run up against, so. All those things do, and obviously, comments like that help us figure out what we should change to make it work better for the village and for the residents.
Maybe separating residential and commercial for one thing. They are so different.
Yeah, we've talked about that too.
Another idea is to separate lots from buildings that already, let's say, a residential lot that has a house on it already. Someone has already cut all the trees down in that lot, whereas if you're starting with a lot, it's a different situation. There's a certain amount of clearing you have to do just to put in the driveway and the house, and maybe there should be some leniency for developing a residential lot compared to cutting all the trees down in your backyard in an established neighborhood.
Right, and we had talked about, how the square footage of buildings factors into, what you're doing on a piece of property.
The clear cutting on Dart that led to this law being discussed, I don't really understand the circumstances of that. They had subdivided out a vacant parcel and then clear cut the lot.
They clear cut the lot first.
Okay.
Yeah. They clear cut first.
Interesting to segment unimproved lots versus improved lots.
Another idea would be that, just to put let's see, going back to the general conditions, new trees shall have a caliper size of no less than 2 inch. So that is immediately making it an expensive proposition to replace a tree you take down for an average homeowner who does not want to, maybe for do-it-yourselfers, people in that income. And a 2-inch caliper tree is going to already weigh 400 pounds and be awkward. It's going to be a 12-foot tree. So it rules out, it means you have to hire someone, and that means that tree replacement is going to cost $600, let's say. So I would say reducing that size, but still make it big enough that it's not going to be run over or be insignificant, either to 1.5 caliper, which is a smaller size, or 1.5 or maybe 8 to 10 foot container ground. That way it would be, I think, fairer for those people who, whatever, they want to put in a shed, they've got to cut down a few trees, but they don't want to spend an extra several thousand. They want to meet the conditions of the new law by planting, and it would make it more achievable and I think be fairer.
I agree.
Yeah, I'd say that's a really good point. One thing that we found is, and I'm sure we all know as well, especially as you move towards that side of the village, the soils are really shallow.
Right.
I mean, you've got like sometimes a couple of inches, sometimes you might eke out 12. And to dig a hole for a B&B is really hard. And frankly, establishing a larger tree is a little bit harder. Whereas if you get a smaller tree, your hole is smaller, but it also gets a chance to kind of grow it, and the roots will actually break up all that shale. So that's actually a really good point. If maybe we separate out residential from commercial, because the commercial folks, I mean, they're not going to grab a shovel and go to your nursery and buy a tree and be doing it themselves. But for a homeowner, that certainly would incentivize them to do it more, to know that they can do it a little bit on the inexpensive side.
And it's much easier to transport. We fit and a lot of potted trees in like Priuses and small cars, but when it comes to a B&B, you typically would need to rent a trailer or have us deliver it, and that's much more expensive and a lot more logistically challenging.
Yeah. Well, I think we have some work to do.
Yeah.
What?
Do.
The question of establishment, having just listened in on the previous discussion about the live stake planting for the Bolton Point new pump station, the thing about live stakes is the season in which you install them. And if they're kept in cold storage, you usually get them from some regional native plant suppliers, and we've done a fair amount of this. But if the job is going to be completed in the fall, there's no point putting in live stakes. They have to be put in the spring. They're kept dormant. Normally, let's say red osier dogwood would leaf out in late April. But if they're kept in cold storage, that can be extended to the end of June. But you're not going to get them established. They're going to have very high mortality if you're going to put in a live stake in late August. So in evaluating a plan that includes live stakes, like the one that's presented, that should almost be a condition, is to ask about the schedule.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things that we captured in here was if things need to be done in phases or we had chatted about that too, saying depending on the time of year that something is starting or being completed, is it appropriate to put plants in? Because there's no out on that now. It's like, well, I think there is, but we did specifically talk about that to give things the best chance to survive. Not just, well, sorry, we gave you a special permit, and we know it's the middle of February, but hey, put that tree in the ground. No. Or maybe yes, depends on what it is. Maybe it's, loves that kind of weather, but yeah, so we had talked about that.
Yeah, the general rule is the bigger the tree, the longer through the winter you can plant it. One winter we planted 30 trees on Brown Road and Thornwood in February and bitter cold like we had last week, and they did beautifully because they were large trees with big, deep root balls. You plant them, put mulch over them, they're fine. But a small dogwood planted the same day probably would have died.
So the board has talked about adding the ability to do like multi-stem, because I don't know right now if our code really allows for that. What would be like a reasonable height, do you think, for a residential owner versus a commercial owner if we wanted to allow multi-stems to be?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what is the equivalent of, let's say, a 2-inch tree in multi-stem? Multi-stem, the equivalent is about 8 to 10 feet. That would have a root ball of the same size, 32 inches across, about 32 inches deep. It's a big, heavy plant. It'll cost about the same, like $600 a piece installed, let's say. So that would be 8 to 10 is equal to 2-inch caliper.
Okay.
And I would say that, let's say, what is equal to an 8 to 10 foot single stem tree in a pot? It's probably a 5 to 6 foot clump. And there are plenty of plants that would, I think adding clumps to the tree law is a great idea, because there are a lot of species that are very appropriate in the village and thrive. Trees like the native river birch, which do very well around here, or flowering trees like serviceberry. There are many trees that are, clump redbuds. There are all kinds of things that could be used.
That's actually good, because one of the things we struggle with talking about shrubs is because, some of the clump things end up being classified as shrubs. And there are some very large shrubs that have a huge benefit, whether it's stormwater retention or native habitat or whatever. How do we account for those in this tree law as like one of the equivalencies? Because, as we all know, like, if you put in like a little 2-gallon azalea, it's only going to get this big, especially here, and people keep doing that. And that's never going to have the same value as, say, like, an oak that you've put in. But you might get an equivalent value if you put in, say, like, a bunch of serviceberries. So we're trying to understand, on some level, we have to kind of put on our let's find every loophole hat. So if I'm a person who's looking at this law and I want to get away with the absolute minimum possible, I could theoretically put a whole bunch of boxwoods in that will only ever get, so big after 20 years. And I will have met the letter of the law, but the intent is to have diversity, the intent is to have shade, the intent is to create habitat, and, to do some climate mitigation, both in terms of like heat island effect and also stormwater. So figuring out that equivalency is the part where we're really needing some guidance.
Maybe that part D then could be something like, yeah, I see just what you're saying, yeah. To try to get that as the result, to more native shrubs that grow to be almost like trees, maybe that could say 5 shrubs, multi-stem trees, or single-stem trees in a 2 or 3, let's say a number 3 container size. You can't use the word gallon, of course, because that's illegal in New York State. So that would be equivalent to what you're calling the tree unit.
Right.
I mean, even 4 at a number 3 size, but it could be a tree in a pot just as well as a shrub, so it doesn't have to be a shrub, so.
Wow. As usual, when we don't, it's more complicated than you think.
Yeah.
Like so many other challenges this board has encountered, I'm sure, in reviewing these thorny issues.
It's just a whole new world, that's all. Okay.
On a separate sheet, we have just a typical plant schedule. And this one is the exact plant schedule that is for a project at Cornell we planted last year at Balch Hall. But just as an example, it's always good to be able to see the form of the tree so that you understand, is it multi-stem, which means clump? Are the roots, B and B, of course, means bald and burlapped. For things, yeah, the spacing, of course, OC it just means on center, which you already are totally familiar with. Sometimes, now this was a good professional plant list, but often when evaluating plans and bidding on them, we find that things are mismatched. The Latin name and the common name are not the same, or the plants may not be hardy, or you'll have plants that are specified in an inappropriate size. I've had jobs where you had to find plants to get on the job that, there is one in the Arnold Arboretum of that size after 50 years, but, certainly you're not going to find them in the trade. So I don't think there's too much to look at here, but
That raises one question about, specifying sizes. We've talked a little bit about how sometimes people will show on a plan, a tree at its full growth in that Arnold Arboretum thing, so you're seeing a circle on the plan that's really large, but really, in reality, it's gonna be 40 years before it's that size, and it may never even get that size because of the conditions, because we've got those shallow soils here. So we have here in our draft, maybe show canopy coverage at 60% of what a final size is, or maybe after 10 years of growth. Would that be a appropriate guideline, or is there some other guideline that we should give folks so that we don't end up with that deceptive drawing?
that's a really good question, and there isn't one standard in the design field for how to represent trees accurately. One of the graphic problems you develop is that on a tight site, if you're showing a lot of trees, if you're showing all of them as very large, they're full size, they may be overlapping so many other things that then it's hard to read and understand what's going on, like where does this plant end and the other ones. So generally, I'd say probably better to ask that they're shown a bit smaller. I don't know, maybe 50% their mature size, but because it can be hard to pick out the different trees on the plan otherwise. It just gets looking very crowded.
Yeah.
But overall, your idea of 60% is good. You could pick it exactly where it is, but I wouldn't show them full size.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, we're trying to ask people not to show them full size because it's a little deceptive.
We're not gonna make that here,
Yeah.
unless it's a box.
And then, I don't know, is there anything else that either stood out to you in looking at the tree law, or anything else that those of us who are reading this tree law and trying to write it feel like we need more guidance on?
Let's see. This, the issue of density is an issue. In other words, you do often find these days there are a lot of dying ash on sites. The dying ash count toward the existing density when you're, or there's a provision, of course, that a dying or dead tree may be removed without needing a special permit, I believe. But,
when we're doing the counting,
counting, what do you count?
Yeah.
Because 4-inch caliber with existing trees is not, your 4-inch DBH, it's not really that, like you could have hundreds of trees on some sites that size. I'd even consider raising it so that people could cut small trees down without needing a permit, but that's obviously up to the board.
The other thing too is, like, if you're looking at a wooded lot, you're gonna have, it's gonna cost you so much to get somebody in to just count all of those. So I think that idea of separating out undeveloped wooded lands.
Residential.
Yeah, I had similar conversations with the developer that it sounds like you, David, spoke with, and you can only, yeah, it was a big barrier for them.
Right. So maybe we look at that 25% applying to already developed properties, and wooded lots having a different goal, where it's not 25%. Maybe there's an end goal where at the end it needs to be like this, and maybe we raise the DBH so that only the special trees are really saved, as opposed to every single 4-inch.
Yeah, I mean, it also just would, in terms of just managing the regulation, if you raise it to 6 inches, it may be there's situations where it doesn't it's not creating extra work for village staff and evaluating it. So you're really catching the most valuable trees, the trees that are already big enough and healthy enough to be formed, and they're clearly part of the canopy that you want to preserve. Not that young trees couldn't grow to create that, but.
The beach, that would be a lot of counting.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see. Well, I didn't go through this and underline every line, those are just a few quick observations.
No, that's great.
The table of equivalencies is gonna be the biggest thing to figure out. What will, how many, 4 to 5, 3 on number 3 containers. And then what that looks like for residential versus commercial, and multi-stem, what equals a tree is what will be the biggest, one of the biggest things.
If you, right. Let's see, one tree unit was just defined earlier. As a reminder, does anyone know exactly what one tree unit was?
Can you pull up the table, Mike, that's in the current code? Because certain size trees count for more tree units than others.
Right.
And it's not in this draft that we're looking at.
Yep, hold on a second.
We can see if that makes sense.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, can you make it nice and big though?
Yeah, I don't think I have that page.
Yeah, that's not in this draft here.
That's just a typical,
How much the tree is worth in tree units.
Big enough?
Yep.
So it's,
Can we
it looks
print
like
this out and give them a
4 to 6 inch caliber tree is one tree unit. So everything is based on 4 inch caliber essentially. 6 to 12 inches, 1.5. So one option to simplify things would be to just raise that standard a little bit, to maybe have one tree unit be a 6 inch caliper tree, and then 9 to 12 inch be 1.5 tree units, etc. But then in a way, you can see this entire value chart is skewed toward overvaluing small trees and undervaluing big trees. A stately oak of an 18-inch DBH oak is like a signature tree on that property, and that's worth right now 3 times some little 4-inch trees. So somehow it'd be better to skew it toward, so that the bigger trees are the most important thing, not every little sapling.
Okay.
And it may be by raising the points for some of those. A 24-inch tree is a big tree. And so a big tree, you see a big tree like this, but no, it's not 24-inch. It only measures 19 inches. I use a tree tape in my forest to check how they're growing from time to time. And you don't find very many 24-inch trees. So that's right now not worth very much according to, in the village's eyes.
Right, whereas that would be a tree that's been there since, I don't know, it's an 80-year-old tree.
Absolutely, yeah. Like a perfect example is, okay, I get the park names mixed up, is at the end of, on the way to the swim club, is that Tankard Park there that you passed? Yeah, okay, at Tankard Park, there was a driver who drove off inebriated, drove off the road and hit that incredibly beautiful pin oak that's there, sort of as you're going, oh no, this is on Uptown Road, you know, and you make the turn to go up to the swim club. And it made a huge gash in the tree. Now, what is the value of that tree? That tree is almost invaluable. It's so big, so beautiful, and yet it didn't reach 24-inch in diameter.
Yes.
So, anyway, just something to think about.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Other questions or comments from anybody? I know we're kind of pushing 9 o'clock.
Yeah. No, I think this.
Definitely given us plenty to think about, some
lot
stuff
to
we had
think about.
discussed and some stuff we haven't, so thank you.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some people here that know a lot more about, you know, plantings and trees and everything, me not being one of them, so. I learned from it too, so hey, there you go, bonus. But yeah, we appreciate you coming in and,
Very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it.
yeah, this is great too, obviously, oh man.
This is, no, I mean, this is.
Yeah, that's outstanding, with the notes, yeah.
Yeah, this is like a Bible, right?
Yeah, right.
This is like.
I don't know what you know this about.
Right, yeah, I can look it up when she says stuff, I'm like, I know what that is, that's a red maple.
Isn't that nice to have all this information all in one?
We do still have the planting program too in the village for residents to be able to plant and get reimbursed, so we do still.
Wow,
Yeah.
a generous program.
Still here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mike, is it possible to print out a couple of the
That chart you set up.
emergency charts to give to them to take with them?
Thank you, Mike.
The one we just looked at.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, another interesting thing on the list is there now are, let's just say that the planting along Trip Hammer Road of calorie pears is so beautiful in the spring. It's a shame that it's an invasive, a non-native invasive species. And if you want to see how is it invasive, all you have to do is drive over the Trip Hammer Road bridge over Route 13, and there's a thorny tangle. And initially, the original one, Bradford pear, was thought to be the perfect tree, fruitless, non-invasive, etc. It was so until people started introducing other calorie pears, the parent tree. And then they would cross-pollinate, and then you had the messy fruit. And then the birds would drop the fruit. And the fruit, when they germinate, they turn into thorny, like hawthorns. And that's what you see driving over that bridge.
Yeah.
So in our list, we do have a calorie pear named Chastity, which is fruitless. So there are some, in the world of tree development and breeding, there are some nice developments that allow you to have those beautiful flowers.
Thornless hawthorns.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it, thank you so much.
Amazing. Thanks so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Before we move on to the trustee report, Yamil, anything else you wanted to bring up tonight? Discuss other business?
Do you know something? Do I know something? No.
Everybody, this is
Well, actually, no, I do have a question. As far as Park Grove is concerned, have we had any updates from them? And who's the liaison for the village with Park Grove?
we have any updates on Parker?
Doing test holes at this point, soil samples.
Yeah, so they gave the presentation to the Board of Trustees, and as far as I know, I don't know that there's been other correspondence with the village after they gave that presentation and took the temperature.
No, they don't. I went through, and I think I discussed this with you, Natalie. We found out they had to come in for the lot line change. I said everything was gonna get on hold and probably be put them about a month behind. We try to do this in one meeting. We will try to, once this is done, we would have to make the zoning change, but we have to know exactly what that parcel is, configuration of the parcel. I don't know whether you know, have to meet the bounds or not, but.
No.
Once that's,
Once it's through assessment.
Yeah, once it's through assessment, I can get it, which I might be able to get this week. Get it to Natalie, she'll have a draft of the zoning change. That'll go to the planning board, or the board of trustees, their next meeting, which they'll read through and set a public hearing. In the meantime, I will set up sending GML 239 out to the county.
For the
That-
zone change.
Yeah, that type of action is going to be type 1 action, because it's over 20 acres. So they'll have to do a full EAF. So, I mean, you're probably looking at another couple months before they're able to come here to
The zone change or the East Point actual development being a part one? Because I thought the zone change was unlisted.
The zone change, if it's over 20 acres,
Okay.
you have to type 1.
Okay.
And that's
So both.
20 acres.
Okay.
Just like we had to do Uptown. We changed that over. That was like 25 acres. We had to go through a full sweep.
I will amend my resolution.
Have one ready already, though, that's good.
I had some time. No longer.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay. Lorraine?
No, but I did have one question, and I noticed this months ago, but then we didn't have meetings because of the holidays and stuff, but the pavilion that Gaslight Village put in, that looks so ridiculous there. Are they gonna put gas grills out there? Oh, God, okay.
They had
I haven't noticed.
asked about it, because they'd asked about how far you put a gas grill under a canopy, type of stuff, so I assumed they'd be putting
Oh, gosh.
gas grills on.
Anyway, it looks ridiculous where they, I mean, obviously, they don't have a lot of property over there, but considering that they had that fire already, the last thing they want, close.
Well, I think I'd rather have it there than people put it on their own porches.
Yeah.
Illegally.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. Actually, that company, some people that own Lansing West, one of the things that's in the lease agreement is you can't do any grilling or other fire activity in your balcony. And I think there's a 20 or 25 feet within the building, but you can't do it you're not supposed to do it on the balcony.
well, it's the same at Park Grove, it's the same at East Point. You can have a grill. It has to be a gas grill, no charcoal, and it has to be 15 feet away from the building. So basically, you could go to the end of your driveway. But there are still people that don't obey that, and they have their gas grill on their patio or underneath their porch area. But for the most part, most people do. And plus, they also provided a gas grill up on the patio area.
I have written up every multi-unit building I've gone to, I've written up gas grills on porches.
I mean, I could give you the apartment numbers. I could give you the apartment numbers, Mike.
I've seen them up against vinyl siding.
Ooh.
Take a look at that.
Yeah, pull in and look at building 1 and you'll see it right there, yeah. But yeah, anyway, I wanted to ask that months ago and I never had the opportunity because when I saw them building it, and I'm like, don't tell me they're putting a pavilion there. And then the next time I drive by, it was up and I thought, that is just so ridiculous. And I'm sure it'll be a problem eventually.
Anything else? Jim, anything?
Well, we got the trustee report at some point.
Yeah, we'll do that after this one.
Okay, otherwise I don't have anything.
Okay, I know, I don't know if Lisa had anything, she had to step away, so. With that though, Jim, you want to give the trustee report?
Sure. Well, most recent trustees meeting would have been January 20th, but it was a federal holiday, so there was no meeting. The other one was done on, and it sounds like everybody's kind of up to speed, was in January 6th. And I know Lisa and Lorraine attended this one remotely. The Park Grove Realty, came in with sort of, as has been said, taking the temperature of the Board of Trustees, proposal to rezone the property adjacent to East Point across from it on the north side of Bomax. Same company that developed East Point They want to build, I think, 15 units and 25 acres. And they were approached by Borg Warner to buy the property. It'd be similar buildings to East Point, and 10 units per building. They talked about they'd be using the same builder and same architect, and they could move forward quickly. Trustees, kind of informal poll, thought it sounded okay and suggested that they make that presentation to the planning board. So preview of coming attractions.
Yeah.
And let's see, the other item, which a hard time following, but basically it was a citizen, John Dennis, proposing that regarding the Cargill salt mine. I guess they're proposing to flood part of the mine, and concern about the drinking water getting saltier, and it's higher than the EPA recommendation for sodium. And they asked the village to do a resolution asking state DEC to deny the permit. And there was discussion about it, but essentially the bottom line was the mayor and others determined it was beyond the purview of the village, and they tabled it, which he made clear that doesn't mean it's dead, but it's tabled. Yeah, they're asking for a local resolution, just asking DEC to slow down, but nothing, as I said, the mayor tabled it, nothing came of it. And then the only other thing was they went into executive session about something or other at 9:20 p.m. That's what I had for the January 6th trustees meeting.
Okay.
If Natalie or Susan think I left something out, feel free to elaborate.
Matches my recollection, Jim.
Okay. I know Lisa's not here, but Lisa has the February trustee meetings, and then I've got March. So there you go.
All right, I'll let Lisa know, because, yeah. I just want to add on, after Jim said that about Cargill, I had to look up, Ithaca Voice just had an article that they posted today, and I don't know if it's the same thing. Tompkins County Legislature urged state officials for further environmental review of the Cargill salt mine under Cuba Lake, joining 8 other local municipalities, which recently passed similar resolutions. That was just the heading.
Yeah, it's the same.
So it's the same thing. Okay, anyway, if anybody wants to read that, Ithaca Voice posted it today.
Yeah, I think, Lorraine, I think it is exactly the same thing, because I'm trying to remember if the proponent mentioned the county or they mentioned the town, but it sounds like the same thing.
Yes.
The article that you referenced mentioned the name of the proponent or the presenter.
Oh, I didn't open it up. I just went, because I remember I saw it when you started to talk about that. I'm like, oh, I just saw something. And
Yeah.
I just quickly went and looked at the Ithaca Voice page. I didn't click on the article. I just read the heading.
I'm sure it's the same thing. It sounds.
Yeah, it probably is.
Sounds like the same request that the proponent was making to have a resolution to ask the state DEC to take another look.
Yeah.
Anything from you, Natalie?
No.
Anything you want to share? Those updates on that?
I misspoke. The East Point project requires a full SWIP. I think I said SWIP to you. But the zoning change requires a full EAF for the seeker for a type 1 action.
Maybe your resolution's just fine the way it is. Okay, never mind.
Next meeting, you will more than likely have the 20 Bomax PDA back here in front of us. That project has increased to 500 units. They have been made aware that the village right now only has 347 available sewer units. I've made them aware of that. So they go back in front of you. They have I'll be sending to you, I had a packet here, I'll be sending it to you. It also has the traffic study for Warren Road and Bomax.
Okay, so that's what they were doing last week then, that I thought maybe it was Park Grove property, but because their things were on our stop sign at East Point Drive.
Yeah, East Point that costs too much. I don't think they'll do it unless they're required.
Yeah,
Mike,
they won't have to.
were you saying that this was the Park Grove proposal, 150? Because I know at the trustees meeting, they said 130 units.
Yeah,
Or is this
130.
a different company?
130 is Park Grove, that's what they're
Yeah,
projecting.
because it
Okay.
was 10 units less than East Point, because we're 140.
And 500 for
20 Bomax.
20 Bomax.
Yeah, that's a little steep, sorry.
Todd Metcalf from General Code is also going to be at the next meeting, unless we have to push that for no reason, but just to give us a brief presentation about that, so.
Well, speaking of that, I do have Jody's draft minutes here in front of me, and I had gone through and just went through and highlighted a few follow-up items. I know we're all tired and ready to go, but just as a reminder, Mike, you had said, let's see, Baker stated at the next meeting, the planning board can run through the list of changes needed and have French create a proposal local law to fix them. And then you had said you would send out the general code presentation that Carolyn sent to everybody on December 13th.
Oh, I was going to send that back out? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but that's all right. I mean, I can do it. If you want me to do it, I can send it to everybody tomorrow, because I've got it in my email.
I've got it right here, I'll send it out.
It said Baker volunteered to forward it again.
I have it open in front of me.
And I will chime in that I did promise you that I would take a look at comparison of special permits over the last year with the tree law as opposed to against that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Now I have to remind you of that.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else?
And I guess there's kind of a question about that too. Right, at one point we thought, oh, we're kind of close, we just need this thing, but now it sounds like, no, we're not. So I am just curious, and this, this is, I'm not, led to either way of this. I'm curious if there's some incremental changes that we just want to say, hey, we know these things are going to happen, go, or do we want to really wait until we have everything hammered out? Who knows how long that'll be if we're going to, I'm joking here when I say break it up into tier 1, 2, and 3. No, but like, unimproved versus, improved residential versus commercial in those things, it is likely that will take longer. I'm just curious if there are things that we could pass along to the trustees that would help, with, because we're getting into that season where we're going to be getting into things that where the tree law is going to apply, that could.
Especially these large developments, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we want to have it in place before, like,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna.
all those trees are going to be removed.
And that's my point. So I'm just curious if there are some things that we know are good and are not good enough, but are good to go. And then we can save kind of a bigger rework of it for, another update. Just, I'm not looking for an answer, just kind of think about it.
So Lisa and I can get together and talk about David's presentation, and, I made notes, I'm sure she did too. We can make some adjustments, and then maybe bring it back to the planning board, and we can go through it again like we did back in Thanksgiving time.
Yeah, I think I think that's a good idea. I mean, I think there's things that we saw were clearly maybe we want to change the area calculation in the next building season. Like, we are pretty set on that calculation, so I think once we can double check that what we want for volume and area calculation, that might be something that we can change offhand to not overly burden applicants that
Right,
come in.
yeah.
And then a further delineation between commercial and residential will take some more time,
Right.
depending on how far down the rabbit hole we want to go.
And it sounds like it's even more important to do a delineation between unimproved and improved.
Yeah.
Because with the commercial, with commercial, really, it could be as simple as, instead of delineating residential and commercial, we could talk about plantings that are in impervious areas, because that would really only apply to commercial. If you're a homeowner, you're not going to have that much of impervious area, and then we don't have to worry about differentiating those, but it sounds like the unimproved piece is actually a huge detriment.
Yeah, it was a big barrier for the Uptown Road
Yeah.
parcel.
In addition to other things, it wasn't the only thing that
Right.
kept them from coming. They had other issues with it.
Our code and the way we do things, but I know it was a big concern for them.
Yeah.
Send.
But what about these tree species? How are we gonna whittle this down?
I don't even know if we need to whittle it down.
Me too, I mean, if these are things that are appropriate here for various categories.
Yeah.
We can just have this as a resource.
And that's the thing, right, it's not like a, hey, you have to and can only plant things off here, no.
Right.
But, I mean, these are the things that are gonna do well here, and we can, as we review planting plans, we can reference this.
Yeah.
You know, somebody might really like some non-invasive thing that's not on the list here.
But it's really nice with all these different definitions.
Yeah, I really like that. It's not just like a list of, yeah, here's the trees that are good, and here's their Latin name, and right, no, it's like the notes.
But now you know, like,
Yeah.
you'll say,
And the ones that are
oh,
good for salt, the ones that are like large street, small, so I think, yeah, that's outstanding.
deer is a big thing, because
Yes.
people spend all this money to plant their shrubbery and their trees, and then the deer's just.
So we talk about that all the time. Well, and you know, the point that David made about, you know, somebody goes out and hires this firm and they're from New England and they're like, oh yeah, these things are good in New York. Yeah, well, not here, they're not. And that's happened, I mean, I think probably between Bill and Lisa and who knows else. That's been called out at least a couple times at the end of last year with various things, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the idea, like, maybe the guidance is, you know, we are going to attach this appendix that has all these resources, and we ask developers, you know, we let them know that if you use these resources and follow these guidelines, we'll be able to sail through approvals of a planting plan.
Approvals will go a lot faster.
But if you want to do something different than that, that's okay, but it just means that we'll have to go through looking at the planting plans a little more in detail.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, every developer is going to want to make it as easy as possible.
They want to go through it quicker.
It's a huge favor to them that we are going to give them a list and say, choose from these.
Okay.
It's a good list.
It really is, yeah, no.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, I'm sure it took Athena a long time. I mean, she had just finished this before Lisa and I met with them, like, before Christmas. And so she put a lot, and when we saw it, we were like, oh my gosh.
I know, I want that, like.
I know.
Yeah. So it takes forever to set these lists up, you know.
Did you have other things, Lauren, or you go?
No, I think, hold on, let me just look. There was one other thing. Oh, did you already mention that, the chart of uses?
I'm working through it, yeah.
And then, of course, we had the order.
Yes.
Order for tackling these issues. I don't know if you want me to repeat them, so we have it in our.
If you want to, you can, obviously, there's
MC.
precedent things.
I've got it.
You got it?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're not gonna be able to tackle that right now. But, I mean, yeah, the next 3 cycles we have to tackle stuff, yeah, that's. Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 9:19 PM. Motion by Lorraine, second by Pat, all in favor? See you later, Jim, thanks a lot. Lorraine and Pat, or Pat and Lorraine? Pat.
It was Lorraine.
Lorraine,
Okay.
I took a turn. Poor Pat, I always like, look at him and me.